Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Wisdom and Wit, the show that'll make you laugh, cry, and question your life choices all in one night. I'm Jimmy, your friendly neighborhood corrupted innocent, here to warm you up before the main event. Now, let's dive right into the cesspool of current events, shall we? So, have y'all heard about our soon-to-be President Trump's latest declaration? He's going to tell the Justice Department to vigorously pursue the death penalty. Now, I don't know about you, but when I hear vigorously pursue, I think of my cousin Cletus chasing after the last piece of fried chicken at a family reunion. And let me tell you, that's a sight that'll haunt your dreams. But seriously, folks, Trump's really doubling down on this whole law and order thing. It's like he's playing a game of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And his final answer is always death penalty? Final answer? I mean, at this rate, we might as well rename the White House to the Executioner's Mansion. Has a nice ring to it, don't you think? Now, I know what you're thinking. Jimmy, ain't that a bit harsh? Well, let me tell you something. When it comes to protecting American families and children, Trump's not messing around. He's like a mama bear, except instead of claws, he's got the full force of the U.S. Justice Department. And let me tell you, that's scarier than finding your sister on OnlyFans. But here's the kicker, folks. Trump's not just talking about your run-of-the-mill criminals. Oh no, he's going after the big fish. Drug dealers, human traffickers, those folks who put pineapple on pizza. You know, the real monsters of society. It's like he's playing a twisted game of Pokemon. Gotta catch 'em all. And by catch, I mean, well, you know. And don't even get me started on his plans for migrants who kill U.S. citizens or law enforcement officers. Let's just say, if you're thinking of crossing the border and committing a crime, you might want to reconsider. It's going to be harder to get away with than trying to sneak a fart in church. Now, I know some of y'all might be thinking, but Jimmy, what about Biden's commutations? Well, let me tell you something. Biden's been handing out commutations like Oprah hands out cars. You get a life sentence. You get a life sentence. Everybody gets a life sentence. It's like he's trying to win the most forgiving president award. But Trump? He's more interested in the most likely to make criminals wet their pants trophy. And let me tell you, folks, Trump's not just talking the talk. During his last year in office, he had more people executed than all 50 states combined. That's like being the top scorer in a game of dodgeball, except instead of rubber balls, it's, well, you get the picture. But here's the thing, folks. Whether you're Team Trump or Team Biden, one thing's for sure. The next few years are going to be more exciting than a squirrel in a nut factory. It's going to be a wild ride, and I, for one, can't wait to see how it all plays out. Now, before I hand over the mic to our next comedian, let me leave you with this thought. In a world where politicians are constantly flip-flopping, you've got to admire a man who sticks to his guns, or in this case, his lethal injections. So, without further ado, please welcome to the stage a man who knows a thing or two about sticking to his guns. The one, the only Donald.
Thanks, Jimmy. Great to have you here. You know, I've been told I'm the Ron Jeremy of comedy. I'm not sure if that's because of my wit or well, let's just say I've got a big vocabulary. Speaking of big things, how about that news we've been hearing lately? It's like trying to read a book without any pages. I mean, come on, folks. We're living in an age where information is supposed to be at our fingertips, but apparently, our fingers are too busy swiping right on Tinder to actually read anything. You know what this reminds me of? It's like that time I tried to explain quantum physics to a group of flat earthers.
I'm standing there, trying to talk about the curvature of space-time, and these guys are looking at me like I just told them the moon is made of cheese. Which, by the way, it isn't. It's clearly made of American cheese, because why else would we plant a flag on it?
But seriously, folks, this lack of information is a real problem. It's like we're living in some kind of liberal fantasy world where facts are optional and feelings are mandatory. I mean, what's next? Are we going to start making important decisions based on what color underwear we put on in the morning? Speaking of underwear, did you hear about the new line of lingerie for politicians? It's called transparency. It's see-through, just like their promises. Yeah, I said it. Sue me. But let's get back to this news situation. Or should I say, lack of news situation. It's like we're playing a game of guess what's happening in the world, and the only clue we have is a blank piece of paper. It's enough to make you want to build a wall around your TV just to keep the non-information out. You know, this reminds me of a story.
I'm sitting in my living room, trying to catch up on current events. I turn on the TV, and it's just static. I switch to my phone, and it's just a black screen. I pick up a newspaper, and all the pages are blank. At this point, I'm starting to think I've either gone blind, or I've accidentally stumbled into an episode of The Twilight Zone.
So, I do what any rational person would do. I call my neighbor a diehard liberal who's always bragging about how informed he is. I figure, if anyone knows what's going on, it's this guy. I say, "Hey Bob, what's the latest news?" And you know what he says? He says, "I don't know, man. I've been too busy checking my privilege to check the news." I mean, come on. Is this what we've come to? A world where being woke means being asleep to actual events. It's like we're living in a giant game of telephone, but instead of passing along a message, we're just passing along our ignorance. And let me tell you, ignorance spreads faster than a California wildfire in a drought. Before you know it, we'll all be experts in nothing. With PhDs in I don't know from the university of your guess is as good as mine. But hey, maybe this is all part of some grand plan. Maybe the globalists have finally figured out that the easiest way to control the masses is to just not tell them anything. It's brilliant, really. Can't have people disagreeing with the news if there is no news, right? I can see it now. Breaking news. This just in. Absolutely nothing. Stay tuned for our in-depth analysis of this nothingness, followed by expert opinions on how this nothingness might affect your daily life. And don't forget to tune in tomorrow for our exclusive interview with the man who discovered this nothingness. You know, in times like these, I'm reminded of a quote by a great philosopher. He said, "I think, therefore I am." But in today's world, it's more like, I don't think because there's nothing to think about, therefore. But hey, let's look on the bright side. With no news to report, maybe we can finally focus on the important things in life. Like figuring out why hot dogs come in packs of 10, but buns come in packs of 8. Now that's a conspiracy theory I can sink my teeth into. And speaking of sinking teeth into things, I think it's time we bring out our next comedian. She's got a mouth like a sailor and a mind like a sailor who's really good at comedy. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the one, the only Dixie.
Well, thank you kindly, Benji. I haven't been this excited since I found out my cousin's wedding was BYOB. Bring your own brother. Now, y'all heard about this Luigi Mangione fella? "26 years old, Towson native, Gilman High School graduate. Sounds like the perfect recipe for a true crime podcast, don't it? But instead of ending up on Serial, he's gone and pleaded not guilty to offing the United Healthcare CEO. Talk about taking I don't like my insurance plan to a whole new level. I mean, first and second degree murder charges? That's like ordering a double cheeseburger with a side of fries and then asking for a Diet Coke. Honey, you're already all in. Might as well supersize that meal.
And terrorism. Lord have mercy, when did I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore turn into I'm mad as hell and I'm going to take out the CEO?
I tell ya, these millennials are taking disrupt the industry way too literally. Now, his lawyer's saying this not guilty plea is just standard procedure. Well, butter my biscuit and call me Sally. Who would have thought that in the justice system, not guilty is about as meaningful as a politician's campaign promise? They're saying they need to review the evidence. Honey, if I had a nickel for every time I heard that excuse, I'd have enough money to buy United Healthcare and fire the CEO myself. Save us all some trouble, right? But let's talk about this murder weapon for a hot second. A polymer ghost gun. Sounds like something you'd find in a Scooby-Doo episode, not a real-life murder case. And I would have gotten away with it too, if it weren't for you meddling insurance adjusters. I know, back in my day, if you wanted an untraceable weapon, you just borrowed your mama's cast iron skillet. But seriously, folks, this case is highlighting a real issue with these ghost guns. They're harder to trace than my ex-husband after alimony's due. And let me tell you, that man could disappear faster than a plate of cookies at a Weight Watchers meeting. It's like these criminals are taking DIY a bit too far. What's next? Build a bear workshop. But for felonies, come on down to Felons R Us, where you can assemble your very own untraceable firearm. Now, Mangione's next court date isn't until February 21st. That's more time than it takes for my Uncle Jeb to explain why the earth is flat. But I guess when you're facing multiple murder charges, you've got all the time in the world. It's not like you've got a hot date or anything, unless you count that conjugal visit. I just hope when he shows up to court, he doesn't try to plead the fifth. Honey, the only thing you should be pleading is for a better hairstylist. Have y'all seen his mugshot? It looks like he let a weed whacker cut his hair. But you know what really gets my goat? This whole situation is just another example of how our healthcare system is killing us, literally. I mean, when United Healthcare becomes Untied Healthcare, you know we've got problems bigger than my Aunt Mabel's bunions. In the end, folks, whether Mangioni's guilty or not, one thing's for sure. He's put the execution in executive decision. And on that note, I'll leave y'all with this. If you think healthcare is expensive now, just wait until it's free. Good night, everybody.